This tutorial shows you the techniques of creating a classically draped couture dress for your doll. First, find a photo of a dress you'd like to attempt. Keep this in view as you work through the drape of the dress. Now let's analyze the design. Notice with my dress how the drapes radiate from the top of the hip upwards and over. The dress is close to the doll's form and there's a full triangular shape that softly drapes down from the hip. Begin by creating the basic foundation as shown in one of my previous videos. The neckline or the length can be as covered or as bared as you want. It will depend on how much control you want over the folds of the dress. The fabric you choose for the foundation should have structure. It should not stretch and it should not be too soft. Try to find a color that matches the fabric of your dress, or choose a skin tone, flesh tone color. Completely finish your foundation as we will be building the dress on top of it. That includes the closure. I recommend hooks and eyes. And put this back on the doll.
I work with the fabric lengthwise. I fold it, catching the doll in the fold of the fabric, and I have enough that covers her head. Next, I grab the fabric in the front and I'm going to pinch it towards the waist. Okay, so I have excess, and while I've pinched it, I can start to pleat the fabric in the direction of our diagram, just loosely, and I can play with this a bit. I'm going to adjust this a little bit later, but for the moment, I'm going to pin this in place. Okay, and that's going to control that, but we're going to come back and we're going to refine that later. And then I continue the pleating, softly pleating. Afterwards, I can come back and I can adjust the pleats. You want to try to cover the foundation completely so we don't see it, but the advantage of working in with the foundation the same color as the definitive fabric is that if it should peek out, we don't really notice it that much. So you continue to play with this until they're just about the way you want, and that might take some time. I want to fold the top over so that we don't see any of the rough edges, and I'll pin those in place. Okay, but once we've played with this and we start to get the fabric moving in the direction, think of it as sculpture. We've got the base, and all we're doing here is we're just deciding where we want the folds to go. And take your time, and because we're going to stitch the folds in the valleys to keep them the way we want to be moving. As you're working on getting the pleats on this side to the way you want them, and you need to introduce more fabric as you're moving downwards, then you want to just pull this up a little bit and hold in place as you're working. I'm not going to worry too much about the other side quite yet until I get the pleating just the way I want on this side of the doll. I might stop and adjust this, okay, but once I've gotten the direction that the pleating that I want over the body, general torso of the doll, now I'm going to start coming in and playing with the other side, because now I want to decide on how this is going to work in terms of the movement as it's moving from one side of the doll to the other side of the doll. And again, I'm going to use the pins to hold everything in place. Later on, I'm going to come back and I'm going to use tiny stitches to keep everything in place. You're going to pin to the foundation underneath, and we can always come back and adjust. But essentially, I want you to really just take your time, because that's the secret of this. We're not going to do any seams, visible seams. The seam that we're going to have when we're done will be hidden underneath the drapes on this side. But I move from side to side now. I've got this side pinned down, and now I can pin, I can even pin over the body so that it's really keeping the direction of the pleats going the way I want them to go. So I'm going to pin down, I'm going to pin in the center of the doll. She has quite a big bust, so it's kind of a little tricky to work with her. But as we're starting to move down, you see that I have pins. I'm pinning this there just so I can stop the action of the pleats. Once you have controlled that, then I continue to work on this side of the doll and also the top a little bit. And I'm going to play with this until, again, I get it just the way I want. Now, as I'm working on the other side of the doll, I've decided I want her silhouette to be pretty well defined, so I'm pinning, sort of pulling this to the back, and I'm pinning the folds down, and I'm making sure that this is fitting her close to the body. So if you, I'll move up so that you can see a little better, but you see I've pinned the pleats really right against the doll's the silhouette, which is, of course, has the foundation underneath. Now I must decide what I'm going to do with the back. So I'm turning the doll around, and that's going to be up to my own interpretation. But I want to sort of keep the feeling of the front into the back. And again, I want to keep the silhouette very close to the body, around to the back and to the side. As you move to the back, be sure that the fabric which has fallen away from the pleats in the front remains separate, remains there. We don't want to end up accidentally pinning the back to the front. Continue the pleating. Okay, I'm adjusting the pleats according to whatever fabric is in the back. And again, you will be sure that you're still on the free and clear of the closure here, that you're still working on the back. Again, you decide on how you want the back to look. Even though it's perhaps less the focal point than the front, still we have to think about what this looks like in the round. So I'll continue to pin this down, and again, I want the silhouette to be close to her body, so I'm going to make sure that right up until the edge of the foundation garment that the body, that the dress is hugging the body pretty closely. Now, the pleats which were going in the downward direction in the front, what I've decided to do in the back, so that they radiate again from the side, is to take them. They're going to be, the movement is going to be towards down, and then but you've pinned this on this side, so you're going to take this and then you're going to pull this back up, and you're going to pin to that side. So what's going to happen is that they're going to radiate still from the same point as in the front. So again, with each dip, I can readjust this after, but I want to just make sure I get the movement down. So I'm going to pull this back up. Okay, there might be some fabric which allows me to play with this a little bit, or maybe I might leave that as it is. But as I'm beginning to work now, is starting to shape up the way I want it to. I just have to decide now what's going to happen with the side. But so far, as you can see, we have very sophisticated look with that dress, and it looks very much like that dress in that photograph that we saw. Once you have everything the way you want it from front to back, now it's a question of figuring out how it's going to close on the side and how we're going to finish this. And so I now go to the inside, the foundation, and I'm going to unhook this. So what I've done is I've given actually the sides a little bit of a twist, and then I've pinned it down there so that exposing the hooks. And on this side, I've done the same thing. Give it a little bit of a twist, you see. And then I'm still using pins because this allows us to adjust it, because we're still in a pinning stage. The last part we'll stitch it down, and that's going to take some time because it will be all hand stitched. Now, once my dress is off the doll, I begin the tedious task of stitching. And what I want to do is I want to take my needle and thread, and I have a single threaded needle, and I want to slip your stitch underneath, say in between the fabric and the foundation, and you're going to make a tiny stitch. Okay, you don't have to put them too close together. They can be, sort of spread out because you won't see what you're doing anyway. However, be careful that you don't pull the stitches too hard, because you don't want to shrink your garment as you are stitching the drapes down to the garment. Try to keep your stitches small, and you want to still try to glide in between the layers so that you show as few stitches as possible on the underside as well. But pretty tedious process here. Make sure you have a little bit of time on your hands. Again, you peel back and you're making your stitches, because afterwards, when the pleating goes back up, we won't be able to see. You should not be able to see anything. And I'll complete the rest and come back. Okay, so now I have finished my hand stitching, and I'm pretty happy with the way the sculpting went around the body. Okay, she's like this, and the back looks something like that. And I've anchored, I also put some stitches in here to anchor the length of the side to the foundation underneath, because I wanted a little bit of slim fitting there. I did, as I mentioned before, tack the outer fabric to the foundation, but when I'm finished, it sort of looks like this, and depending on what the look that you want, that might be fine. But I've decided that looking at the original photo, I wanted something a little bit more form fitted around the torso. So I've stitched this part together. Make sure that these are stitched together, and I'm going to fold this over the back as such, and I'm going to put a hook and eye there, so it will anchor the front to here, and when she gets ready to get in or out of the garment, she'll be able to unhook that and then unhook the foundation underneath to get out of the dress. But I'm going to eventually, I'll put a pin there for the moment, but when I'm finishing it, I will put a hook and eye right there. So I'm going to pin this to indicate where that should go. And so with that, my dress is going to resemble something, to that nature. Now all we have to do is just stand her up and hem the dress. And here's my finished dress. When you hem your dress, be sure that the doll is wearing her heels so that you get the length just the way you want. And don't worry if it's not exactly perfect. The imperfections make it interesting and make it yours.
Here's the original dress, and here's my dolly version. For more ideas, come visit us at fashiondollstylist.blogspot.com.